Welcome to La Trobe University in Melbourne. My name is Jan Libich, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce Dr. Kerry Howells from the University of Tasmania. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you.
Kerry is not only a really inspirational educator and someone who's been a very established researcher, but she's also a practitioner. You've given many seminars and workshops to a number of institutions about effective teaching and learning. So we're very happy to have you. Please make her feel welcome. I would also like to introduce our audience. It's a mixture of my students, tutors, as well as some of my colleagues. So thank you very much, guys, for coming. So we're here today to talk about what we can do to actually improve the learning and teaching experience of both the students and the staff. And I think there's no one better to talk about this than Kerry. I actually lost count of all these awards that you've received in the last few years. At least 8 since you joined University of Tasmania in 2006, I think, or something like that. So, right. I mean, what is it that makes people give you awards? What is it about your teaching? What is it that you do in classroom that has such an impact?
Yes, it's a very big question, and I'm hoping that sort of unfolded during our interview. But just in short, I think one of the things that I do is that I really take note of Parker J. Palmer's philosophy, which is that he's written a wonderful book called The Courage to Teach, and he believes that teaching cannot be reduced to technique, and teaching is all about the identity and integrity of the teacher. And I don't really believe I mean, I think you have to have the technique of teaching really down pat, and make that your craft, but also one needs to look at the inner dimension of what's going on. And so if my students aren't learning, the first point I go to be able to sort of reflect on that is not the students but myself. And so I see teaching as much about self-development as I do about development of techniques and strategies and things like that.
Oh wow, well this is quite radical actually. Normally we think of getting in front of the students and just teaching them something, and you thinking about the kind of teacher's perspective. But you have this concept of an awake learner. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, this concept started by me sitting in front of thousands of students I've taught in the last sort of 20 years and questioning them as to whether or not they're awake, because I think that students have become really good at pretending to be awake, but actually their mind's 1,000 miles away. And I have this notion of the awake student, which is one where they're totally present in their learning process, so that their whole being, they bring their whole being and their whole attention to what they're studying or what in terms of the lecture. And I expect that of my students. So I say to them at the beginning of the lecture, I know when you're asleep. And even though you've got your eyes wide open, I know the difference. So they start to get really scared.
And so, well, I mean, the obvious question is, why is it so important? And secondly, what is it that stops students from being awake in the lecture?
Well, I think it's really important because it's like the precondition to learning, so that we spend all this money on ICT and pour billions of dollars into teaching teachers how to teach or teaching strategies, but we've forgotten the actual precondition for those teaching strategies to work is that the students are actually attentive enough in the learning process. So I think we need to spend a lot of time in thinking about how we can actually get students into that awake state before we start worrying about whether or not they're actually able to absorb our information or absorb our content or engage in the teaching strategies. They've actually got to be awake enough to learn to start with.
So maybe we can use our audience here. What do you guys think it is that usually stops students from being awake in the classes? And I'm inviting both the students as well as the teachers to give me some ideas. And I'm sure Kerry will elaborate on that if we have no response. But can you think of what these main problems are that...
I think the lecture is not interactive enough.
Okay, so it can rest from the lecture. Do you think it's a part of the story?
It's a part of the story. It's only a small part of the story.
What's the big part then?
Well, I think that there's two parts going on really. That the lecturers, yes, they need to be able to teach really well and engage the students, but the students also need to make it their decision that they're going to come into the classroom as awake as possible and take responsibility for that. But I also think that students haven't necessarily learned how to be attentive, so I really believe that when students come to class, they really want to be engaged, even though they aren't necessarily engaged. That's not their preferred state. So by nature, they want to be engaged, but there's a lot that happens that shuts them down. And it's about unpacking some of that with them and for them, and then giving students strategies to learn how to be awake. And so students have to come into the classroom with that commitment and those strategies, but also the teachers have to take some responsibility to teach them that, because they don't get that necessarily anywhere else. And I guess the kind of awakeness that I would be expecting in my pre-service teachers would be quite different perhaps to the kind of awakeness. There'd be similarities and differences in the kind of awakeness that you would expect in economics students, because they're going off into different professions and they might have a different kind of orientation to learning. But I think that we can sort of both give the particular and the general aspects of strategies and things.
So I agree with all this baggage that we carry around and kind of that prevents us from focusing on what we do. And, you know, with all this computer stuff, I've actually been noticing over the last, 8 years or so, it seems that students, maybe they play more computer games or they use the mobile phone more, and in those kind of environments they're always in control and they're always doing something, it's always interactive and something happens. Yeah. So it seems like even the students who genuinely interested in the subject, they kind of cognitively, they just can't sit for an hour and listen. Yeah. It's very different from 10 or 20 years ago when we didn't have that sort of distraction, so we kind of grew up in that sort of learning environment. But I think maybe, do you think cognitively, and the brain got kind of rewired through the technology, that it's harder for the students now to actually focus and stay awake? Yeah,
I do. I think, and that's one of the biggest concerns I have, because I think that there's some research that says that people, just not only students, but people who are working out in that environment where there's a lot of email and distractions as well, can only pay attention for no longer than 11 minutes. And so that's that's not even good quality attention. That's just sort of like paying attention to a task.
So we should wrap up now. I think our audience, in about a minute or so,
that's right. Yeah, but it is a really big issue as to how to counteract that constant distraction and that constant sort of movement away from the task. Because
so how do you do that? I mean, what do you do? Give us some practical tips of how to stay awake.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost is helping students to make the decision that that's a really important quality to have, this awakeness, and that it's required of them out in the workforce and as a parent or as somebody who's giving instructions to somebody else or receiving instructions. So you couldn't imagine a surgeon, for example, just being a bit distracted in the middle of this really kind of keyhole surgery, or you couldn't imagine all those Olympic athletes. You could see it in their eyes, that sort of quality of awakeness. And I'm wanting my students to actually develop and really see it as their role as a student to develop that quality of awakeness that they'll probably really need, maybe concurrently in their work, but also in their future profession as well. So it's not enough to say, oh, now we live in an age of distraction, so therefore we just have to have these students like this. I think in education we've settled for far too low a level of presence in our students, and we really need to raise that level of expectation of what we expect. And so for students to come in knowing that we expect that level of presence when we're having this learning engagement. So that's the first step.
Now, and I suppose you're kind of tying it to what the lecturers do. So the level of presence of the lecturer, does it kind of somehow transfer to the student? How are these related?
Yeah, I think it does. Like I say to my pre-service teachers that one of the qualities of a really good teacher is teacher presence. But a teacher has teacher presence has become really good at being present. So I think teachers and also really need to have that quality of presence, so that just in who they are and how they are, the students are just learning a lot from them because they're so present in the present moment with them. And teachers' presence influences students' presence. but also teachers' expectation of students really needs to, as I said before, really needs to be raised. And
so what do we do? I mean, what do you do before the lecture, for example? What do you do the night before the lecture? I mean, how do you... I suppose we all, finish up last-minute stuff and then we run off the lecture, so we don't really spend much time with kind of preparing ourselves mentally for the lecture. And from experience, that can make a big difference in terms of the impact of the lecture and the attentiveness of the students. So what are your tips about what can we do before the lecture? Or
well, I think there's a number of things. I think there's maybe I'll just first of all talk about the things that students can do and then move on to what teachers can do, because I think students can make that decision to be in the present moment, just like I said before. But there's also sort of practical strategies where they can keep on bringing their mind back to the present moment. So keep on asking themselves, where am I now? And keep coming back, where am I now? And keep coming back. And there's something else they can do, which is to write down everything that's on their minds at the moment and just decide, okay, after the lecture I'm going to attend to those, but during the lecture I'm going to really focus on this lecture. And then I think that the other thing they need to recognise is that the other thing that's taking their presence away is this inner attitude of complaint and dissatisfaction, which is what I experience in a lot of students. So students can tend to go into that victim mentality and blame the system or blame the lecturer or blame the parents or blame the lack of interest or something and sort of make that the reason for not being engaged. But I think if they can learn how to not complain and not to be full of complaint and dissatisfaction, that has a really, really big impact on their learning. So getting to the teachers, I think that the teachers...
Can I just ask you, so are you implying that it is actually the student's responsibility to stay awake rather than the teacher's responsibility?
Yes, yeah, I am. But I also think that there's the teacher's responsibility to really expect that of them. So we have to give them the strategies and also the expectation. But I also think that the teacher's innermost attitude of complaint can also really flow to the students. So if they're full of complaint and dissatisfaction and negativity, that can really shut down students' learning without them even knowing that that's what's happening. So say, for example, complaining about the big amount of marking we've got to do and having this big session, big sort of complaint session with a colleague and then going straight into the lecture, the students can actually feel that negativity when you walk in. So I think that there's a real kind of hidden dimension to that interrelationship between the teacher's innermost attitude and the student's innermost attitude, and we need to watch that.